This is probably the point at which I better show up. Hello. Welcome to episode 20 of Shelf Analysis here in the Ricochet Book Club. It is 7 p.m. On a Thursday. I'm reliably told it's a Thursday anyway. It seems vaguely plausible. Welcome to episode 20 of the program. Thanks to everybody who's joining us every night. Because, to be honest with you, the only reason that I continue to do this program 3 nights a week is because there's just so many people saying so many nice things, and it's getting a lot of people through this in some small fashion. I realize that we're not changing the world here, but we are making things a little bit better. And for some of you, I have a couple of treats. I have many treats. Our author tonight is a treat, frankly. Every author is a treat. But as I said today in the book club, just be slightly cautious. Don't miss anything, and I'll tell you why. Because I have every shelf analysis between now and the end of May has all been sorted, organized, done. Everybody's in for it. The only time we don't have a shelf analysis, and I want to flag this with you now, and by the way, no, the world is not on fire immediately above my head. The sun has just come out through the skylight. I decided I was going to try a different spot today, and the sun has come out through the skylight immediately onto me the moment I've started the show. Thank you, universe. Every show is organized between now and the end of May. Only one that there won't be is this coming Bank Holiday Monday. I'm taking the day off for Bank Holiday Monday, so there's no show next coming Monday for shelf analysis. However, there will be one next Wednesday and next Thursday, which is my birthday show. And I've managed to organize somebody quite special for my birthday show. As well as that, I've just bagged 2 fairly enormous names that if you're not here for them, you are going to go, oh, I wish I was there. I wish I'd had the chance to ask a question of these 2 people. Both of them will be turning up at random intervals throughout the course of May, and I'm not going to tell you when, and that's one of the ways we keep you watching the show. Things to be dealt with tonight. Where am I going to go with the news, first of all, before we go to the UK? I'm going to go, oh, this is lovely today. This did just happen this morning. Thank you to the Irish Times for giving us a mention today. They did a whole article on writing, not riding. That's a different article. That's one about normal people. They did an article about writing and reading in the pandemic, and they talked about a bunch of things, including what Courage have done and ourselves as well. So we got a mention in the Irish Times today. Thank you, Irish Times, for mentioning. This coming weekend, one more mention. I didn't mention it last night, but I think it's worth another one tonight, because there's no episode between now and the book show this coming Sunday on RTE Radio 1, episode 3 of 6 in the book show. I'm going to be talking to Nisha Dolan about her debut novel, and we also have Mike McCormick, who is talked to by a book club. Mike will answer their questions, as well as all the book news of the week with Stephanie Preisner as well. That's 7 o'clock on RTE Radio 1 this coming Sunday evening. But of course, the podcast goes out beforehand. Make sure you subscribe to the book show wherever you get your podcasts. Should be Friday afternoon this week. You'll be able to find that as well. There's very nice ones lined up for the book show as well over the course of the next few weeks too as well. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to mention specifically, other than, if you haven't had a chance to see, not book related, but I did last night after I finished the show with Sarah Perry, went in and looked at David Ireland's play Cypress Avenue. It's an Abbey Theatre co-production with the Royal Court. They did a couple of years ago. The Royal Court have it up on their YouTube channel. I've linked to it in a load of places today, but if you just look up Cypress Avenue on YouTube, you'll find it there. Starring Stephen Ray. It's exceptional. It's an incredible, phenomenal piece of 90-minute theatre. It's hard going in places, but I also laughed possibly more than I've done at anything over the course of the last while. And if you're theatrically minded, that could be for you. If you're also theatrically minded, tonight, when we finish here, I'm going to look at the National Theatre production of Frankenstein. This is the legendary one from a few years back, where Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch, 2 Sherlock Holmeses, both play Frankenstein and the monster on alternate nights. They swap over roles. The one tonight, I think, has Benedict as the monster, and tomorrow night you can then watch the one where Johnny Lee Miller plays the monster. That's what I'm up to, just throwing it out there. They're well worth your time. Our sister group, Culture Shack, has a lot of conversations about this sort of thing going on at the moment. I don't think I've mentioned it here at all. So if you're interested, have a look. Find Culture Shack in Facebook, and it's the sister group of the Ricochet Book Club, where we talk about everything cultural that is not books. You find out all of that there. Now, that noise you heard was not a siren. If you did hear it, in fact, it was a seagull. There's a lot of seagulls around here. Final day of the Read Irish Women Challenge 2020. Congratulations again to Buccaneer 808, who is the one who puts together the Read Irish Women Challenge every year. It's been a fantastic month. It is the 30th of the month. It finishes out with your next read inspired by this challenge. As always, taking part in the challenge and on her final day. And weirdly, because, the weather's been half decent today, I don't get a live cam from her. All I get is this. Karina sent a picture of her in the back garden earlier. I didn't have time to do that today. She had time to go off and do that in the back garden today. She's going to be reading Caroline E. Farrell's Lady Beth. That's what that looks like there. And that's been inside of the bookshelf for a while. Karina, enjoy that reading. Enjoy the rest of everything else it is that you are up to in your reading world. Karina will have more books for you next week as well. But Karina's having a nice bank holiday weekend as well, because that's how we roll around here. Briefly, it's been a really long day, but a really nice one, and they're both book-related things as well. I want you to keep an eye out for them over the next while. This afternoon, when I came home from work, I conducted a judges meeting for the Dalkey Literary Awards 2020. As you probably know, the Dalkey Festival this year, like everything else, has been shunted, moved, postponed, and there are other plans afoot. But the literary prize, this is the first year that there are two separate categories, and I'm chairing the judging panel for one of them. So myself and Keelan Hughes and Gary German had our first virtual meeting today across two parts of Dublin and a different country. It's going to be an interesting bun fight, and no, the shortlists aren't out yet. I will let you know as soon as the shortlists are knocking around. I might see if we can announce them here one night. That would be a good thing. And as well as that, I conducted a virtual awards ceremony today here in my kitchen, because this is how we're all working now in the 21st century. Every year I do the Children's Books Ireland Book Awards. And this year they're sponsored by KPMG. And of course, it would normally be a big event with kids happening in Dublin City Centre. Because of where we all are right now, I had to conduct the awards in my kitchen. You will be able to see them over the course of the next couple of weeks if you keep an eye on the Children's Books Ireland social channels. The ceremony will be happening there, but done in my kitchen this afternoon. I'm going to get on with this because I really have a lot to talk to with our author who's coming here tonight. Not even just necessarily because the two of us have known each other almost forever, and we used to work together as well back in the day. Helen Cullen, where are you? Hi, how's it going?
Hi, I'm doing really well. It's so exciting to be here, although I wish you hadn't preempted me by talking about all the extraordinarily big names that we're going to be featuring.
You are one of those extraordinarily big names, big names, and well, you know that. I'm going to give people a little context before we get into this. They maybe have read one of your, well, probably haven't read the new book. I've read the new books in Next Door, but you and I have known each other for a really long time. Explain that, because were you there when I started working in RT?
Well, I started in 2FM part-time in 2000 and full-time in 2003. So as far as I remember, you were always there when I was there. But
2001, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
And you used to explain to people what you used to do, because this is part of your dark, seedy past life that you, as a current contemporary successful author, don't want everyone to know about. And that's why we're here tonight.
I love talking about the halcyon days of RT. My friend David Byrne, who worked with me at the same time, and with you who were there, we both live in London now, and we often talk about how we didn't know we were born when we were working in 2FM because we had such a great time. So I worked across all the different radio programs. I was our beloved, now lost Larry Gogan's BA for the first few years when I was there, and that was, I mean, gosh, you can't really ask for a better first proper job in life than working with Larry Gogan every day out in the Roadcaster and all that jazz. And then worked across all the different programs, and my last sort of show that I was on permanently was with Dave Fanning, who was, my big inspiration for wanting to get into radio, really listening to him growing up in Portlaoise on the radio at 8 o'clock. And then in the later years, I'd moved over into kind of working full-time pretty much in the live music department. So the radio legends.
Yeah, that's it. And my thought of every time I think of you and of all the years we worked together, it's usually you in wellies somewhere backstage at a festival with a clipboard telling people what to do, getting them from point A to point B and making stuff happen. Because that was a huge part of your life, was being, one of the cogs that made all of the live music recording and all of that work at festivals. You always looked like you were enjoying it. Were you enjoying it?
I was always enjoying it. And somehow along the way, I convinced the then head of 2FM, John Clark, to let me put on these tours with the new Irish bands that were coming through. So twice a year, I'd head off for 3 weeks and you would come and MC them, and all the different DJs who were on air at the time. And we would do these gigs from all over the country. And we set up the School of Rock competition for secondary school students, which was kind of a battle of the bands. And yeah, I don't really know how I got away with it, but it was just the best of times. And I often think about it still and miss the magic of it, of being in the middle of all that kind of live music brilliance. It was amazing.
Nonsense. Don't be silly. Look at exactly where you are and what you're doing right now. You've got great bookshelves. That's all that matters. You live in the UK these days. I know this primarily because we met for dinner the last time I was over in London. I remember London. London was a place you used
Oh,
to go and visit
I know how
sometimes.
glamorous our
It's pretty much the
lives
same
were
for you, isn't
before.
it? Though, yeah, because you don't live in London City. You live well outside London.
Well, I mean, I suppose I lived in like London proper for most of the time we were here, and then a few years ago we moved slightly outside to right on the edge. So we're in the countryside, but still on the tube line, which is amazing because you can still kind of what we call go into town, and go into where all the action happens. But we're living actually, in the countryside. So while all this has been going on the day-to-day basis, our lives don't look that different because we wouldn't see that many people, and it's super quiet where we are. I think if we were still living smack in the middle of London where you were, and you could go out and see those eerie streets and all the shops closed, where normally there would be so much action all the time, then I think it would be more, evident. But living where we are now, we could be in, you know, it could be anywhere really.
I want to tell people the story of last Saturday, because last Saturday I was on RTE Radio 1, the same way I am most Saturdays now, because sport isn't happening. So what they're doing is they've stuck in the likes of Muggins here, and I get to go on Radio 1 every Saturday and play 4 hours worth of anything I fancy. It's great fun. But I'm also online for all of that time. So I'm looking around and seeing things happening. And then I saw something and went, I bet she knows. And it's this. This happened last Saturday. And then I took a picture of it, sent it to you, and you hadn't seen this. This is Graham Norton talking about your upcoming novel.
I know, it was, if you could have actually seen me, it was the most surreal thing because I have a strange-ish hobby that I make these big patchwork quilts. And I had it all over the table and I was so frustrated sitting at a sewing machine. And then I got your message and it was just like this totally bizarre, out of nowhere madness. I mean, to be honest, it's strange to think of anyone ever reading your book. It's the little thing you forget about when you're writing it, and then in the years before it actually ends up in the bookshelves, that at some point people will actually read it. I mean, it's terrifying. You sort of live in this weird world where you want simultaneously everybody to read your book and also nobody to read your book.
Mm.
And then to get this sort of jolt of reality where Graham Norton is sitting somewhere reading it is a very strange thing. And I
Your
mean,
exact words to me, and I still have the text, is I think I'm having a stroke, is what you said. Those were your words.
yeah, it was just, and I absolutely love Graham. Over the years in London, it's one of the things that is kind of a rite of passage. I think a lot of people, when they come over, they go to the show and they queue up and are in the audience. And, myself and my friends have done that a few times. And I've just always loved him and thought he was such an amazing interviewer. And I love him on the radio. And so it felt like a genuinely really exciting thing that he would pick it up and decide to read it and go the whole way through with it. It was amazing.
I have it on reliable information, although I can't tell you why I know this, that his sister watches. Hello, Graham's sister. How are you?
Hello, Graham's
Tell
sister.
me a little bit about the book. Tell us about The Truth Must Dazzle Gradually, and then tell us about when it's out.
Okay, well, it was meant to be out on the 14th of May. And I suppose it's strange to think that in a couple of weeks, we would have been standing in Debray Books on Grafton Street, sending it out into the world. But it's been pushed back until August, which isn't too bad in the scheme of things. And with everything else that's going on, having your book postponed is a small sacrifice to make in the midst of all the madness. So I'm trying to be quite sanguine about it. When I'm my best self, I try not to be too disappointed. But the book itself, it's set on a little island off the west coast of Ireland. And it was originally inspired by this notion of kintsugi, which a lot of people are familiar with now, but for those who aren't, it's the Japanese form of pottery that after pots get broken, they're repaired with gold or silver filament so that the history and the cracks become part of their beauty now, and more beautiful because of the history that's evident there. And I was thinking about this a lot at the time when I started writing the book, about how the things in life that seem to break us or that can be the most tragic actually end up helping us become, the truest, most beautiful selves in the end, when we get to take that kind of long view on it. So the book opens up on Christmas Eve, and the Moon family are at the center of this whole book. And it's Christmas Eve on this little island off the west coast of Ireland, and a terrible tragedy befalls them. And then we go back in time to the 1970s in Dublin, and we see Maeve and Murtagh Moon, who are the mum and dad of the Moon family, meeting for the first time. And it was great fun writing that because they're right in the middle of all the music scene in Dublin in the 70s. And I had Pete Holiday from the Radiators from Space sending me messages, and I was saying to him, okay, if you were at a gig in the Bag Inn and this band were playing, and this is this plausible this would have happened. And it was amazing. I could have written a whole book, with Pete, just on all the amazing anecdotes he told me. So, it's a totally different gear change. Then you go back and you're immersed in all of that, and you see time catching up to this fateful night in 2005 on this little island. And then the second half of the book sees life stretching on from then unto present time, and how the family move on, and the individual characters cope or don't cope, or change, aren't changed, find their way through. And I think, the title, The Truth Must Dazzle Gradually, it sort of, for me, it feels like the book is really about that sense of personal truth, and how it doesn't always reconcile itself with what we consider to be universal truths, and kind of accepting that our own personal truths don't necessarily click in with those kind of accepted norms is sometimes the way to finding peace.
I have a couple of things. One of which is that obviously, if people want to buy the book, obviously they can get advanced. You can put in your advance order for it now. You did a great post a while back where you were talking about how important that is to authors when books are due to come out. So even if the book isn't due out for a couple of months, it does wonders for an author if
Yeah.
you're going to do that now. So I'm saying people should do that right now. You don't need to say that. I'm going to do that on your behalf.
Thank you.
Jackie,
Yes.
the wonderful Jackie Lynham says, Graham has great taste. I read an early copy of The Truth Must Dazzle Gradually by Helen. It is superb. I was engrossed from the first chapter. I loved it. That's
Thank you,
Jackie.
Jackie.
Paula says, Helen, you sent our book club loads of bookmarks and postcards for the lost letters of William Wolfe. We all loved it. You've been doing nice things. There's much love coming in for your bookshelves. We'll have a conversation about that in a few minutes.
Oh, yes. I'll give you the little tour.
And Annie says, these shows the new normal in my life. Thanks for giving us all a regular and wonderful slice of headspace. That's because the authors are good fun to talk to. I'm conscious we've talked for almost 20 minutes at this stage, and I haven't asked you, what are the books you've chosen for tonight? Now, we talked a little earlier when we were doing the check, and at that stage you were going, I'm almost sure I know what I'm doing, but I don't know. So you obviously made a final decision at this stage.
Well, yes, but I'm going to do a little long list down to short list, seeing as you told me there was a little bit of elasticity.
I touched a little bit of it. Yeah, I'm going to get into trouble for this, but fine. We'll be here in 3 hours. It's okay.
Because I was procrastinating all week about it. So these are the books that almost made it. I'm going to do a little flyby, and then I'll tell you about my 3 books properly.
Oh, okay.
So the first one is one of my favorite books of all time, which is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. And if people like Virginia Woolf, oh my God, they love this book, because it basically tells 3 stories. The imagined story of Virginia writing Mrs. Dalloway, the story of a woman in the 1940s reading Mrs. Dalloway, and then a 1999 story of a kind of a modern day Mrs. Clarissa Vaughan. So that almost made it, but not quite. Mm-hmm. My second book that I love recommending to people, this is a very different book from what I normally read because I'm quite scared of scary things. But my friend Emma Flint wrote this amazing book called Little Deaths, which is a true crime story about a woman who was accused in Brooklyn of murdering her children. And it's sort of like a feminist manifesto because she was vilified by the press because people didn't believe she was acting like a grieving mother should. And it's absolutely amazing. Oh, she's such an exquisite writer, Emma, and I think people will love it. Another classic, but I didn't pick this because I think people know about it so much, and I know you love it.
I do.
But this is the book I give people when they say they haven't read a book since they were in school and they really want a book that will, totally captivate them and love them. And I've never had someone start The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay and not absolutely love it.
That
Next.
didn't make your list. What sort of list is it? Well,
I
it
know.
has
Well,
Sarah
we'll
Winman's
see.
Tin
I
Man
have
on it. Okay,
specific
yeah.
things to say about the big three. Sarah Winman, Tin Man. Sarah is reading this aloud on her Instagram page every day this week at 4 o'clock. So if
Oh,
people
wow. Okay.
haven't, they have to go hear Sarah read it. And sometimes, particularly since I've been thinking more about the writing full time, it's quite hard to read books now for me without deconstructing them on my mind and going, oh, I see what the author's done there. They've shifted the tense, but they're not drawing attention to. We're going back in time or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the book that I sat down and I read the first page in my living room and finished the whole thing a few hours later, sobbing, totally just blown away by it, and had been completely immersed and forgotten that I was even reading. It just felt like I'd entered another world. And then the
Yeah.
last
Do you ever
one.
get the chance to go and see her at an event as well? I did one event with her a couple of years ago in Waterford, admittedly in front of about 9 people
I
because
was
no one showed up.
there.
You were there that night. I remember you were there for the festival. And you were there that night,
Yeah.
and she was just she played in front of the 9 people who were there as if it was the Royal Albert Hall, and it was just such a lovely night.
She's amazing. And at the time I was writing the second book and I told her that I was just sort of getting into it, and she said, you need to write as if you haven't got all those faces pressed up against the glass waiting for the new book. And I thought of her so often in the time afterwards when, you know, editors or publishers or whatever would be asking how the book was going. And I think of Sarah saying to me, say nothing, close the blinds. So she saved me. And then the last one, which is one of the funniest books I've ever read, is this book called Less by Andrew Sean Greer. And it won the Pulitzer Prize. And maybe this is unfair to say, but I would never have picked this as the sort of book that would win the Pulitzer because it's far too fun. But it's one of the funniest books I've ever read. And it's about this sort of failed novelist who goes off on a year where he accepts all the invitations he normally says no to escape from his life. And absolutely amazing. So they're all the books that I really wanted to talk about, but wasn't allowed because I could only pick 3.
So those are the ones we're not talking about. What are we talking about tonight then?
So the first thing I want to talk about is, oh gosh, calamity, but I'm back. The History of the Rain by Niall Williams. So Niall, I think, is one of the most amazing contemporary Irish writers who somehow slips onto the radar a bit, although his recent book that came out last year, Anything is Happiness, has rectified that, and I think a lot of people have discovered him. But this book, which came out, I think, in 2006, was nominated for the Booker, longlisted for the Booker Prize, and it is one of the most incredible books that have ever been written, and I don't think enough people have read it. It tells the story of this girl, Ruth Swain, plain Ruth Swain, who is in her sickbed, surrounded by thousands of books. And the whole book is really a love letter from her to the literature in her life that has shaped her and her family. And for all the people in the Ricochet Book Club, this is like a dream come true, this book, because there are hundreds of literary references. So the whole time you're reading it, she's just basically intermingling with all her thoughts, memories and lines and, you know, thoughts and quotes from all these books that she's read, that, you know, for the big readers that are here, it's just the most incredible experience to be immersed in her literary mind. It's anyone who knows Niall's work anyway, the whole thing is just like one long poem. Absolutely amazing. It's no surprise it won the Booker. What is a surprise is that it's not in every bookshelf in the country. So I hope people discover it.
I did off the back of This Is Happiness, which is just, it's a beautiful book. It's exceptional. I went out and bought a copy of that, which is in the books I have bought for myself, yep. TBR, which is separate to the other TBR. So that's sitting next door and will get read.
And
okay.
I just have to tell you this line from it, which basically I think will speak to the hearts of all the Ricochet Book Club readers, because Ruth says, we tell stories to pass the time, to leave the world for a while or go more deeply into it. We tell stories to heal the pain of living.
Small reading, but very good. I like that. Yeah. Okay, what's next?
So next I have My Name is Lucy Barton from Elizabeth Straight. And I know a lot of people have read this book, but I deliberately picked it because I wanted to share a piece of wisdom that Liz Straight gave to me that I think is good for everyone to hear at this time in the world. Because I met Liz at the event where she was signing My Name is Lucy Barton, and I was talking to her about my writing and saying to her that one of the things I found most difficult was that, having written my first book in the margins of my life, where it was never the priority, and it was something that I kind of, you know, just chipped away at, that I found it really difficult to make it the most important thing in my life and still feel like I was being, you know, a good partner, a good daughter, a good friend, a good employee for my other work, and to make this a priority. And she said to me, Helen, Do you want to be a good girl or do you want to be a good writer? And I just think
And you made your
sometimes,
choice.
but I think sometimes it's very hard for all of us to find the time in our lives for the thing that feels like the selfish thing that brings you joy. And I think now more than ever, we have to seek out those things for ourselves. And I recently read in a book that Polly Sampson wrote called A Theatre for Dreamers, where she said something that really stayed with me. And it was that sometimes we get confused between love and duty. And I think this happens a lot of us, you know, where we feel that we have to be dutiful to all of the other stuff in our life because that's how we express our love. But we need to express love for ourselves and write our books and do all the other things that make us happy. So
Fantastic.
from
That's
these,
2 out of 7. Okay,
and
and you
then
have one more.
so one more is
Now,
this.
one more looks like 2 more, or it looks
No,
like
but it's
possibly 3
only just
more.
because these are background for people who might have read the other books. So Michelle Roberts is my writing mentor, and she's written these memoirs in her life at different times. Like this one, Paper Houses, which is this incredible memoir about her life in the 70s in London and how she became a writer and her feminist politics and just being a woman writer in the world, and it's fabulous. And she wrote another one, which is the one that fell behind, which is called Food, Sex and Love. And if you ask Food, Sex and God, and if you ask Michelle what she writes about, they're the things she says she writes about all the time, but she writes about so much else. But what's interesting is that she has now written this new memoir, which is coming out in June, called Negative Capability. And it's basically unlike anything else because it's a memoir she wrote after her 13th novel was rejected by her publisher at a time in life where, you know, it would have been really difficult for anyone to come back from that. But she spent this amazing year kind of charting her recovery from that and how she found her way back into writing and what was going to happen next. And for people who like, who love Virginia Woolf, and who like Rachel Cusk's autofiction, this is an amazing thing. It's sort of, I mean, Michelle was basically did Eat, Pray, Love before Eat, Pray, Love was ever a thing, but with all the grit and kind of feisty, amazing, you know, feminist, intellectual, spirited fabulousness of a woman of her generation. So I think it's a really interesting book because it meditates about how you recover from your life not turning out exactly the way you expect it to. And when your identity is so linked with what you do and then you lose that, how do you find yourself again and find your way back into it? So I think that that's coming out in June and I hope it doesn't fall through the
Negative
cracks.
Capability.
Yeah,
Okay,
by Michelle
fantastic.
Roberts.
Maybe very briefly, just before we finish, you did promise us to go for a wander. So what are you going to show us? Are you going to show us
Well,
the bookshelf? Are you going to show
I'll
us
show
the
you. Can I
come on,
flip
come on.
you? Let me see. How do I turn you around?
I have no. Yo, well done.
So,
Fantastic.
well, there are the shelves in my office. This is where the magic happens, supposedly. And that's my desk. And these are the books then that I'm either having to review, that are proofs, or that I use for, you know, work. And then I have piles like this all over my house of books that are to be read. And then downstairs I have a hardback bookshelf, and I have a bookshelf of sort of unusual things. These are some prints, paintings by an amazing artist from Mullingar called Andy McManus. And also as part of those 2FM days, I met him when, oh, the lampshade's ruining it. Hold on. When now
Oh,
the
now the
windowsill.
window is
Oh,
ruining it.
you get the idea. That says love never goes out of fashion,
That's fantastic.
and that one's called Love Never Goes on Trees. And Andy's parents ran the stables in Mullingar, and so I met him when we were doing the gigs in 2FM, and he's this fabulous artist and also lives in London and was my first friend in London. And this is the other thing on my desk that keeps me going, because I got this at the V&A exhibition about David Bowie, and they had this little print of the notebook where he wrote the lyrics to Ziggy Stardust. And it
Wow.
blows my mind to think that, you know, that song came originally from a notebook that he had in school. And I love that as an idea when I'm sitting here writing, that so much of the art we love began one day with someone scribbling in a notebook when they had no idea what it might become. And it keeps me going, having that there when I'm trying to get a few words strung together.
That's yourself and Owen Colfer, the 2 authors I know who both have little bits of David Bowie in their writing rooms just to give them some form
Really?
of inspiration. That's a
Yeah.
thread. We talked to Owen in an earlier shelf analysis. If you're interested in Owen, you'll find him in an earlier one. I'm going to put this up one more time before we finish, because as recommended by Graham Norton, The Truth Must Dazzle Gradually by Helen Cullen is out. What's the exact publication date? Do you know? End of August?
20th of August. Yes, all going well.
Here we are, and I will be there to launch it for you. I've made my promises already, so wherever it is and whenever it is, I will see you there.
Thank you so much.
A couple of things before we finish. Emily says, I really love The Lost Letters of William Wolfe. Can't wait for this one. We'll definitely be pre-ordering it.
Thank you, Emily. You're my favorite.
And Pauline just says, are all authors really nice people, or just the ones Rick chooses to speak to? It's all authors. They're amazing.
Nice attracts nice. Birds of a feather.
This is how it works there. Stop it now. Love to Damien, and thanks a million for coming on the show tonight, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks a million, Helen Cullen finishing up tonight's shelf analysis, and that's it from us for tonight. Now, hang on, I put you back on again. Wait, no, now take me off again. There we go. I'm not good at the buttons. Now it's fine. You got it. That's Helen on shelf analysis for tonight. Other than that, that's it. Finished for this week. Next week, Bank Holiday Monday, there won't be one. I'm taking a well-deserved slight rest. So there will be shelf analysis again this coming Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Don't forget, there's a brand new book show on RTE Radio 1 this coming Sunday night at 7 o'clock. You can catch me on RTE Gold tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. and then on Radio 1 on Saturday between 2 and 6. And just stalk me on the internet, because it's the best way to do things. Other than that, have yourself a lovely weekend. Enjoy yourself in the book club. And again, see you next week. See you same time. Take it handy. Thanks for joining us.